Hello and welcome to the People's Food Summit. And I'm very pleased to have a dear friend, an old friend, and a very good friend, Dr. Vandana Shiva. And I don't know how many books you have written. I know it's well over 30, but Vandana has actually published yet another book called The Nature of Nature. And Vandana, I'd love you to explain to everybody about this book and why it is so important.
Thank you, André. It's always a joy to work with you, write with you, think with you, and celebrate the World Food Day and the World Food Summit as a people summit, because what we have from industrial agriculture, which is the agriculture of corporate thinking, corporate agribusiness, what I call the poison cartel, what they've given us is extinction of species, because they promoted monocultures and they promoted pesticides and they promoted herbicides whose only purpose is to push diversity or extinction. They're the root of the climate havoc. 50% of the emissions come from the industrial food system. And along with that, the destruction of soil, the destruction of water. But particularly on the climate issue, not only are there so many meetings taking place, there's so much talk. And while industrial farming is responsible for 50% emissions, industry is trying to blame the farmers and trying to push a model of farming without farmers, food without farms. So more fossil fuel use, more entropy, more pollution, more climate havoc. So the book, this is the Indian edition, and it's also being published at the same time in Australia and New Zealand. Its subtitle is a subtitle we've grown together, André, over the years. And your book, Growing Life, is the book that put at the center of our thinking the technology of photosynthesis that nature has. The assumption is that nature is dead. The technologies are only in the hands of those who destroy. Ecological technologies are not seen as technologies. Pesticide spray is seen as a technology. A GMO is seen as a technology. Digital agriculture is seen as a technology. But every transformation by nature, by humans, is a technology. And, I cite Buckminster Fuller in the book in a section called Nature's Technologies. Fuller says that in its complexities of design integrity, the universe is technology. The technology evolved by man is very immature compared to the elegance of non-humanly contrived regeneration. Man does not spontaneously recognize technology other than its own. So he speaks to the rest as something he ignorantly calls nature. The natural is the real technological. And I would then add, the natural is the only kind of agriculture working with ecological principles that Harvard identified as biodiversity and diversity and the law of return, of recycling. And now, with 1% has contributed to 66% today. These days, in today's world, 66% emissions, which are driving climate change, come from the 1%. And yet they are trying to create more false solutions on the same logic of nature as passive and manipulation as innovation, whether it's genetic engineering and manipulation of seed, or it's geoengineering and manipulation of the weather of the planet. I always remember, organic was called the science of living systems. And it's been attacked and attacked and attacked, but that's the real science. making chemicals to kill humans first and insects, plants later, and still keeps harming humans, because we are part of nature. Every time we harm the earth, we harm ourselves. And the book is both, on the one hand, all of the science I've learned on entropy, on the fact that nature does not create waste, does not create pollution. Ecological farming doesn't create pollution. It's, on the other hand, again, your work in the whole climate issue. I cite your work that the 28 gigatons emissions annually can be absorbed by 10% farms. You've written about this. You've written about it in your new book on regeneration. That it's in our hands to grow food in better ways, food that is healthier and improves our metabolism, because most diseases today are metabolic disorders of the industrial food system, and also sort out the climate havoc. And I have called it the metabolic disorder of climate change, to just help people wake up again to the fact that the earth is living. She's not inert matter. And climate change is a metabolic disorder of the earth. It should be seen as a living system, and therefore all approaches should be to heal the living system, to stop the harm, to stop the aggression. So, of course, I've built a lot on your work in writing this book, Andre.
Thank you. I think when you talked about the earth as a living system, it very much reminds me of James Lovelock's concept of play. And, he was first ridiculed for that, but more and more, the more we learn, it's not just a living system, it's an intelligent living system, like Buckminster Fuller was trying to say. It's an elegant system and a regenerative system. I think that's the thing that we've all learned, and what we have been trying to get that message across, so people can go from the dead reductionist industrial system through this incredible living, flourishing, biodiverse system that is really, I like to say, is powered by the energy of the universe, from in our case, the sun.
Yeah. Yeah. And interestingly, talking about the insanity of those who are thinking of making money anyway, the problem of polluting the atmosphere and disturbing the Earth's capacity to regulate her climate and her temperature and her hydrosphere, then they say, okay, we will engineer the climate, we'll do geoengineering, we will put more pollutants into the atmosphere. And the latest I read today is someone has said, why should sunshine be for free? I will sell sunshine. And I will sell it on demand, just like people order their dinners for delivery. That I am setting up an app and I want to put up satellites so that when you want sun, I will sell it to you. Now, that insanity of everything being reduced to a commodity, everything being reduced to an energy-intensive polluting system is really ecocide, if you ask me. And the point is, no one gave them permission. And this is like the Wild West in the Americas. Anyone who could grab land, anyone who could grab water, just grabbed it. Anyone who could grab what they could. I think this planetary grab being sold as the new innovative technology, our work is so vital to tell the real story of the Earth. The Earth as a self-organized, intelligent, evolving living system, 290 degrees down to 13 degrees, 28% of 98% carbon dioxide down to 0.03%. Now, that is what we follow in our systems of organic regenerative agriculture. And you're so right. The part of the earth and every living system, from the microbes in the soil to every seed, to every tree, that it is regenerative. It regenerates itself on its own capacity. It's autopoietic.
Yeah.
Everything synthetic fertilizers, genetically engineered seed, all this lab food, it is all allopoetic with huge energy and huge pollution. Schrodinger, I cite Schrodinger in the book. Schrodinger was one of the founders of quantum theory and basically the architect of the Schrodinger equation, which is what gives the dynamic nature of the transitions in quantum theory. But he wrote a book called What is Life? And he says, life is not like machines. Machines have entropy and pollution, but living systems have negative entropy. Now, that is what those who pretend to be scientists have no idea about. And I think the moment we are in is a moment where the peasants who know their science at their level, all the emerging sciences of living systems, all the ecological practitioners who know the soil is living and the seed is living, and of course the sun gives us the blessings of life, it shows so clearly that those who blame the cow because it has 4 stomachs are constantly trying to re-engineer the world with no knowledge, no capacity. And that's why they've messed up the planet with every recipe of an industrial agriculture model. And that's why we have to keep doing our work, because it is better science and it is better practice that feeds the world, cools the planet, brings people health. There is no other way to do farming.
Yeah. And, from my point of view, as a lifetime farmer, I'm on my farm at the moment, and I'm 70 and I still farm because it's what I actually love doing, and I'll continue. I'm not going to retire from it. But I think when we actually talk about the future, for me, what's really interesting is that our sugar mill is just closed here. And a lot of our farmers now, they're in debt, as most industrial farmers are. They owe money to the bank. Now they've been forced to sell up part of their farms to pay the banks because, one commodity has failed. I'm employing my next door neighbour, and he's saying to me, farming has finished here. They don't want farmers. And I said, no, farming hasn't finished. Your type of farming's finished. It's actually been finished a long time, and you've been dying a slow death. But the farming we're involved in is growing, and it's the opposite. We have a farming diaspora in industrial agriculture, but our sector, the organic and regenerative and agroecological sectors, we are growing farmers because we are viable. And I think this is a really important message to say, there is a future, and it's a really good future. And we need to, just let people know that going over to our way is such a better option. And, farming can and does prosper.
And look at every imperative. Look at the health imperative. Look at the metabolic disorders people are facing. 75% chronic diseases linked to an industrial food system. Mm. And only an organic ecological diet, whether you look at the data on how quickly it deals with the pesticide residues, how quickly it provides all the phytochemicals that you need for your gut and your gut's health, and the beautiful diversity that's growing behind you on your farm. That's the kind of diversity that's vital for nature, but that diversity is vital for humans. And yet for 50 years, we've been told monocultures with chemicals is what feeds the world. It's so false. It is so false because it's not feeding anybody. Those who are eating it are getting sick. But second, 90% of the GM corn and soya in the world is going for biofuel and animal feed. It's not a food system. Yeah. It's an anti-food system. And of course, its only objective is to drive the farmers out of farming And as I mentioned, the slogan of farming without farmers and food without farms. It's ecocidal slogan, it's a genocidal slogan, because it will aggravate every one of the crises that industrial farming and industrial food systems have already created. The health crisis of people, but the health crisis of the planet, the metabolic disorder of climate change. This idea that lab food will suddenly solve the climate problem, which the billionaire of the world and the scientist of the world is trying to offer, is not at all true, because lab food needs feedstock. Just like factory farms need more feedstock, lab food needs more feedstock. Scientists have done the work. 5 times more land will be needed to feed the microbes in the lab. And all of this energy intensive system of not depending on the sun and using artificial energy will increase emissions by 25 times. So here's a disaster in the making, both for the planet's health and for people's health. And the ecological, organic, regenerative farming systems, which are growing and need to grow, they should be the only systems that are called farming.
Yeah.
They're the only systems that should be called food systems. All of the other is poison systems, greed systems, death systems. I think Rachel Carson called it Neanderthal technologies, crude, primitive technologies that were only based on killing.
Actually, I'd probably say Neanderthal technologies were a lot more sustainable. They at least had, we think about 300,000 years, and probably only disappeared because of when we came through the Eurasian continent. Our species was the one, but I think the other one, which is you mentioned, is the issue of the cows and this demonizing of cows over methane. And part of the research I was doing is trying to look at the exact amount of how CO2 actually causes, how much climate change it actually causes in methane, and trying to get the science. And it's actually very difficult because I realized most of it is modeling, and you can do virtually anything with models. And if anybody's worked with computers and maths, garbage in is garbage out. And that's what we've actually seen with so many of the models and why the predictions have been so wrong. But the best ones I saw showed that water vapor and clouds are responsible for around 75% of the greenhouse gases. Carbon dioxide, what we call the climate change effect. So water vapor and clouds are the 75% of greenhouse gases, though most of it. Carbon dioxide accounts for 20%, and all the rest of the greenhouse gases they talk about, such as nitrous oxides, methane, combined are 5%. And so when you break down methane's actual contribution to climate change, it's 1.6% at best. Now, that's all the methane, and most of the methane we get is actually leaking from all the fracking wells.
Exactly.
And talk about permafrost and all these other melting, and the amount, that percentage that comes from cows is negligible. Now, the other really important thing they don't mention is methane has a half-life of 12 years. It breaks down really quick. Carbon dioxide has a half-life of 300 years. It's there 1,000 years later, it's still there. Methane breaks down into carbon dioxide, and that methane from natural grazing systems is absorbed by the grass when we talk, and it goes into the soil. So they've got it totally wrong with our systems, where we have cows grazing on grass in our regenerative organic systems. We are actually greenhouse gas negative, and it is, for me, a total corruption of science. The data they're putting out there on the contribution of cows is absolute scientific fallacies. And they've got
You're so right.
Yep.
You're so right. And there's a book written by Gates on the climate issue. And he begins by saying cows have 4 stomachs, and that's why there's methane. No, cows are meant to graze, they're herbivores. That roughage has to be digested. That's why in the nature's technology of ultimate design, they were given 4 stomachs. For you to define their 4 stomachs is a problem, and therefore to give recipes everywhere, kill the cows, and he calls them public enemy number 1. It's so wrong because, as you know, and ecosystem is an ecosystem without cows, without animals. Every ecosystem has trees and perennials, it has animals, and it has annuals. All of that in concert feeds each other. You need all of it for integrity. And for anyone who tries to say, get rid of the animals, get rid of the cows, they try to do it with the trees, They say get rid of the trees because they come in the way of tractors, of the monocultures. And of course, the third issue related to this is without animals, we don't complete the cycle. Whether it's on pastures or even on organic farm, on small Indian farms, it's the livestock that is the alternative to fossil fuel fertilizers. And if you want to avoid all the destruction from fertilizers, you've got to have the partnership with livestock. So you're so right, as we build the movement and sustain it, and you in your 70s and me in my 70s, I think the most exciting part of it is not only do we grow more food, as we've shown, with health per acre, and that most of the food people eat comes from small farms, 80%, that this food is healthier for people and it is healthy for the planet, is the solution to all the climate havoc. You don't need to build big carbon capture plants with more materials extracted from the earth, with more fossil fuels used to run them, and to not solve a problem, but create a new problem. I think so. Our movement at this point, 2004, is not just the model that is allowing us to realize how we can live on this planet, eat, and take care of the biodiversity of the planet, take care of the climate of the planet. But I think most importantly, and at least I see it with what you do and with what I've tried to do with my new book, Nature, is we are bringing real science back at the center stage.
Yeah. Look, I agree, and it is really important. We are getting good science, but deconstructing a lot of bad science and getting the messages out. And I think the really important one for us is the change on the ground. That I've seen. When I've been with you in India, what you've been doing. The amount of farmers that you're working with. I can remember one of the events where that you had where there were the widows and the children of the farmers who committed suicide, their husbands, sons, brothers, because of the GM and industrial agriculture. That problem. But the other one for me, then I remember going to one of the women's co-op where they were growing organic cotton, and everyone from farmers through to the people who ginned it, spun it, made the clothing, beautiful hand colored. Everyone got a fair living, and to me, that's
dignity and meaning.
Yeah.
So, that's going so well. And I've actually just updated 2 of our most important reports, which, I wrote in the early days. And then we got so busy with work, but I'm updating it. I'm updating seed keepers, all the people who save seeds, all the diversity of seeds. So we stopped it in 95. So 20 years later, updating it. And the other one was called Seeds of Suicide, where we were monitoring the suicide. But now, as you saw when you came, the seeds of hope is what is showing the promise. Everywhere BT cotton has shrunk this year by 50%, 60%, 70%. And I can see it'll go. And if we keep going and we keep giving hope and we keep bringing the science and we keep the integrity of practice, I can see the industrial farming system, no matter how much propaganda they do, no matter how much policy they hijack, no matter how much the financing they push behind it, that this partnership with nature and working with the abundance that nature creates and we can co-create with her, truth is stronger than false claims.
Yeah. Look, I really agree with you there. And I know, talking about where I am at the moment, where most of the farmers are in serious financial trouble, having to sell land, leaving farming. Industrial agriculture has its own, really, we could say, seeds of its own destruction, and particularly the destruction of farmers and family farms. They just want big corporations and robots and to do it all. But what we're doing is the real success story, and we're doing it on every continent. I think that's the really important thing. And I know, Vandana, from my perspective, what I've seen in India, but also I know that you're on every continent, the way that you are inspiring this movement and this, how can you say, this exchange of ideas and getting people to rethink their systems holistically. I think it's just, it's absolutely incredible, I suppose, the best way I could explain it.
Yeah. And no better way to celebrate World Food Day than to give recognition to the system that's working, that the earth and nature design that has been practiced over millennia, and that is being regenerated through regeneration. Exactly.
Look, Vandana, I just want to thank you. I just think it's incredible. You're in your 70s and you're so active. You're still out there. Most people retired a decade ago. You're only just getting started. You got more.
Exactly. Our lives are just beginning with a wonderful welcome of the future in which we have a role.
Yeah. Look, Vandana, thank you. It's always lovely.
Thank you, André. It's a joy to be working with you all these years, and look forward in our 80s and in our 90s. We will continue.
Exactly. We'll celebrate our 90th birthdays together.
Yeah. Wonderful. Greetings to everyone. Thank you.